Okay, as everybody is filtering in, we would love to know where you are from. And since we are talking about supporting girls with ADHD in school and beyond today, I would love to know how old is your favorite young learner? How old is she? The young lady that's inspiring you to come to our webinar today. Let us know where you're from. Let us know how old that favorite learner is because these strategies are going to really work for all ages. So we have some folks that have some 10-year-olds, some folks that have some kids who are more of the high school age. Wow, we have people here from California, from Ireland. Welcome in, everyone. As we're coming in, let us know where you're from and how old that learner is that you're here to learn about. Wow, from Norway. Geez Louise. This is awesome that we have people from so many different parts of the world and also so many different ages. So my name is Rachael Moss. I am an executive function coach and a professional development specialist here at Educational Connections. Every single day, I work with students in my sessions who are dealing with ADHD. And I work with a lot of young ladies who are dealing with ADHD. This is something that is very important to me. I don't think I don't think I've told this story before, but when I was a little girl in school, I was chronically forgetting my homework. I would leave it in my locker, which is a place that I knew was like good to keep my things. And it was to the point where my dad and I would often have to go to the school when it was locked up, track down a janitor and find like my materials. Like I would have to go in, find them in the school, and then walk them out. I also remember times when my dad would call one of the neighbors that was in my class and get those blank worksheets and then go to the post office to make copies. I was always forgetting things. My mom would help me by making like a little like study list with me of all my classes where I could write things down. And with good interventions and great support, I was able to, learn better ways for myself and how my mind works. So, this is what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about helping our young ladies who are dealing with ADHD in school and beyond. And I want to encourage everyone here as you have questions, put them in the chat. Don't wait until the end. Put them in while they're fresh in your mind so that we can get to them during our question and answer section. So, all during our session today, I'm going to be talking about my experiences as an educator, working with students with ADHD, and also talking about information that will help all of us support those young ladies with research-backed strategies. So, the first thing that we want to talk about is the fact that we may be hearing a lot right now about girls with ADHD and why this is. So, the reason that we're hearing a lot more about this is because we have a lot of research now about this. And what research shows us is that girls are presenting differently than boys. So, our past research is really focused on the way that boys are presenting ADHD. And, just to be clear, we used to use the term ADD, but the current term is ADHD. So when we think about a young boy who is dealing with ADHD, we will often kind of associate that with behavior that is quote unquote driven by a motor. And so we think of ADHD in terms of like this really physical and frenetic hyperactivity. And what we've learned through research is that both boys and girls are dealing with ADHD, but girls are presenting differently. So, where we may think of that stereotypical boy running around as if driven by a motor, with girls, we are seeing that that is happening, but it's a more internal process. So, we can kind of think of that as hyperactivity of the mind. So, we have to look for ways to or that are going to support this mental hyperactivity, and it'll help our favorite students as they move through their academics and their daily habits. Now, one thing I do want to mention here is that all of the strategies that we're going to share today, they are going to help any student who is dealing with ADHD. But as we're talking, we are going to be focusing on some of the ways that girls may have a unique presentation. So we have a lot of families, because I asked in the beginning, tell us where you're from, tell us how old your learners are. We have a lot of folks in here who are here to support a young lady in their family. Maybe we have educators here who are supporting a young lady in their classroom. And so we've probably noticed some key characteristics if we have a young lady who is dealing with ADHD. So we will generally see three things: inattentiveness. We will observe a lot of self-faulting or internalization behaviors, and we're going to notice a lot of disorganization. So we're going to talk about all three of these in turn. And as we talk about each one, you may want to, ask some questions about these, or this may be like, oh, that is exactly what I'm observing in my daughter, my granddaughter, my niece. So the first one that we're going to talk about is inattentiveness. So this presents itself as kind of like our little lady that we have here on our slide, kind of like dreamy, like off in space somewhere, not paying attention in class. So when I think for each one of these, I want to kind of illustrate this through a student that I work with, kind of tell you like how she came into the session, strategies that are working, and like where we are now. So I have a student that I've been working with for about 4 years. Her name is Laurel, and this is how she came into sessions. Her parents were noticing that she was very inattentive. This is when she was in ninth grade that we started to work together. And when I talked with her, I asked her about how things went in classes. She would always describe that it was incredibly difficult to pay attention in class. And she was taking very difficult classes. So this is a student who has high academic aptitude, who is taking advanced science, math, and English courses. But when she was taking these classes, she really wasn't able to pay attention. And when we first got together, she had a ton of work that was overdue. So I want to step back here and talk about this in terms of inattentiveness, because within this kind of case study that I'm sharing, I'm also kind of highlighting what we're going to see as outcomes of inattentiveness. And if you think about it, if you're having a hard time paying attention in class, if you are struggling to pay attention when you're like reading something, or you're struggling to pay attention to all of the haptics and notifications like from your learning management system, it could be that you forget about due dates and you have your work kind of snowball. And this is how Laurel came into my sessions. So this inattentiveness had some tangible consequences in her life. And with other students I work with, I do see that this inattentiveness for a young lady who has ADHD can cause a lack of focus on due dates, lapsing, turning things in. So when we started to work together, we started to kind of mine some strategies. And what I started to observe was that even though this student was inattentive, this student could always excel when there was a structured assignment. So for example, I first noticed this when she had to write at length about a topic in her English class. I think they were reading like Lord of the Flies at that time. She had a prompt that was asking her like 5 or 6 different things, very like checklist style. First, write about this character, now write about this character. And it told her to write 2 paragraphs per prompt. She could do that. So this was a big light bulb for me. And this also is something that's going to help a lot of students who are dealing with ADHD. If you're noticing inattentiveness, structure is going to be a great way to support that. So when we noticed that structured assignments were helping her out, we started to add that into other things that she was doing. So the first thing that I really talked to her about was, what structures does she have in class? And she described to me that when she was in class, she goes in, she's like looking at the board, she's paying attention. And I asked her, like, do you take notes? This wasn't something that was on her radar. So we started to work together for a structured note-taking apparatus that she could use in class. I always recommend Cornell Notes. If anybody, wants to know more about Cornell Notes, we can like dive into that during like Q&A in a little bit. But this is something that provided her structure in her class. She knew what she had to do. She knew how to write down things, how to categorize them on the paper, and she was able to pay attention. The other thing that we noticed was, even when she had a structure, there were still some bumps in the road. So we came up with a plan. And our plan was to have her use self-advocacy, to raise her hand in class and to just ask a simple question to her teacher, such as, oh, hey, you know what? Could you go back a little bit and spell a word for me so I can put it in my notes? This was a student who was kind of afraid to engage in self-advocacy. And so we worked together to come up with some like almost like scripting that she could use. And these are strategies that you can use with any learner. So if you're noticing inattentiveness, the first step would be to notice, are there structured assignments or structured academic work that your favorite young lady is excelling in? If you notice that that is true, think about structures that you could add in. Note taking is a great one. Many times, students will have a structured note guide from their teacher, or they'll have a study planner or a handout that they can use to take notes. So it may be that you don't actually have to create anything. Rather, you can use the things that the teacher has already created. Also, self-advocacy is a great way to help structure time and interactions for young ladies who are dealing with inattentiveness because of ADHD. There is no shame in raising your hand and asking someone, oh, hey, would you tell me more about that? Would you repeat that? And Laurel, the first time she did this, she came to the next session and she said, oh, my teacher said I ask the best questions. So it was such a beautiful moment because she was afraid of using self-advocacy, which is such a powerful tool for our young ladies who have ADHD, and she got such positive feedback. So if you're noticing inattentiveness, first thing you want to do, see if that young lady is responding to structures in her academic work. Then step 2 would be to add some structures in, whether that is note taking, whether that is using a teacher created study guide to structure time in class. And you can add on an additional skill such as self-advocacy to give her a script for what she can do if she feels herself zoning out and wants to get back in the game. So even if there are some little bumps in the road, things can get a lot more positive. Now, I did mention that this particular student that I'm talking about for inattentiveness, I started working with her when she was in 9th grade. She is now a senior. We are looking at colleges together. She is taking AP classes. She is excelling in so many of her academic areas. And she has really grown from where we started when we were working together at the very beginning. So the next thing that we want to talk about is self-faulting and internalization. So this is something that I always, this one to me always feels like a dagger to the heart. And this may resonate with a lot of folks who have joined us today when we start to talk about self-faulting, because one of the big ways that boys and girls differ when they are dealing with ADHD is the way that they talk about work. I'm going to take a little sip here. So, boys, when they are dealing with ADHD and they have some work that is just, they don't want to do it, it's hard, whatever, you'll hear things like, this math homework is stupid. But girls will say, I'm stupid. Girls will think that they have a personal deficiency. This is one that I always really like gravitate towards. I told you in the beginning of the session about like little elementary school me always leaving things at school and we had to go in and like get the janitor to open up. I would always think to myself like, oh, I'm messy. I'm lazy. I can't keep track of anything. And I'm really lucky. I had parents that were very supportive of me. My mother is an educator. So my mom was like, no, we're going to make you an assignment sheet. Like you can learn this. My mom actually used to draw my assignment sheets with like little cartoons on it to make it like really like happy, but I remember even though I wasn't getting shame from my parents. I had very supportive parents. I was still feeling a lot of shame. I was feeling like there was something, and there's fireworks because I talk with my hands, and that is an embarrassing for me when that happens. Okay, so when we're helping girls who have ADHD, we are going to hear a lot of self-faulting talk and a lot of internalization. I have a student that I started working with about 4 years ago. Yeah, about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. And she just started college. And when we started working together, every session was um, a list of things that were wrong with her. I'm not one of the smart girls. My teachers hate me. Nobody wants to work with me in class. I'm lazy. I'm bad at school. I'm stupid in science. And when I would hear these things as an educator, the first thing that I wanted to do, and I think this is what all adults want to do, you hear a kid you care about talking about themselves in these negative ways, we want to rush in and fix it. We want to say, no, oh my God, you're brilliant. Look how lovely you are. Oh, you don't want to sit with those girls anyway. If they don't want to work with you, you want to work with people that value you. We want to rush in with all these pep talks. The big strategy here is to challenge the self-talk. So, in order to do this, like we want to rush in and fix it. And I'm not saying don't pump up a kid that you love. What I'm saying is get to the root of why she is self-faulting and internalizing. So, when this young lady started working with me, she was just always really down in the dumps about her work. There was this pattern of negative self-talk. Like she would come to every session like, well, I have, overdue work because as you know, I'm lazy. And I would say to her, okay, so I'm noticing that you're never late for our sessions. You always have some work turned in. So what makes you say that you're lazy here? Are you lazy about everything? This is a kid that would often talk about her dog, and I knew like she was always walking the dog, grooming the dog. I said, "Are you lazy with your puppy? Like, where's this lazy word coming from?" And then she would talk about the subject. So she would say, well, I'm lazy in math, because like I don't do good. I'm not one of the smart girls in there, and my teacher rolls their eyes like because like they say I ask too many questions. And so again, I started like challenging that. Okay, so do you think that you've always been this way in math? Could it be this year? Could it be this unit? And so by challenging and having a productive conversation, I learned that this kid was taking calculus, which I always call wizard math. So this is a very rigorous class. This is a very difficult subject, and it was hard for her. But instead of saying, oh man, I took geometry a couple years ago and I did really well. There is something up with calc this year. That wasn't coming out of her mouth. But then I got out of her that geometry was easy and she loved it. That she had a little little bit of a hard time in algebra, but that she really loved it. And so out of my mouth started coming things like, Rebecca, you told me, didn't you tell me you were good at geometry? So I understand, like, you've got some feelings about math this year, but what do you think is different between geometry and calc? Because sounds like you were kind of a rock star in geometry. And then we started to mine strategies. So instead of just saying, no, like, don't talk about yourself in a bad way, I started to challenge how she was talking about herself and got her to tell me times in the past that she was successful. I have another student, another young lady who deals with ADHD that I've been working with for about a year now. And when we started working together, my goodness, you would think this kid was, by the way she talked about herself, was deficient in every single area. And math was another course for her where I can't do it. I'm stupid in this class. I just, oh, like every single math class I've ever taken has just been a nightmare. There's always calls home. I always get progress reports. And so I again started to challenge the self-talk. And for this kid, math had always been an issue. I found out this was not a preferred subject, didn't like it, wasn't her jam. But then I learned that the young lady, Samantha, um, was killing it in science class, particularly in science classes that had a ton of calculations in them. And so I started to challenge that self-talk, like, hey, you're working on this chem homework, and I hate to burst your bubble here, kid, but that looks a lot like math that you're doing. And then she was like, well, no, see, this isn't math because what this is, and then she's launching into these descriptions of, this like these like chemistry, like equations and stuff. And then we were able to show her how the skills transferred. So, the big strategy here when you are dealing with your favorite young lady who is engaging in this self faulting or this internalization, it's not to denounce that, it's not to erase it, it's to challenge it and to say, okay, when is a time that you were successful? What is another subject that has parallel skills? So both of these young ladies that I told stories about, they are, we are still working together. The one that started working together with about 3 years ago, um, this young lady is not engaging in that self-faulting or that internalization anymore. In fact, she's just started college where she is the like lead in her public speaking class and everybody wants to study with her. And so, because it's been a couple years, I actually recently said to her, hey, you remember when we started working together, you were always talking about how, the other people didn't want to work with you because you weren't one of the smart girls. Like, how does it feel now being one of the smart girls? And she kind of like lit up because she wasn't thinking about that anymore. That wasn't like a pattern of hers with her academic work. And she was like, oh, yeah. Oh, man, when I was little, because like between 14 and 18, you get ever so old. She's like, yeah, when I was little, oh, man, I was like so mean to myself about school. The young lady that I just started working with, we still have some self-fault talk. This is really tough. This is a really tough one to help a student break away from. So there will still be times where she's coming in and she's talking about how stupid she is in a subject, how lazy she was about something, what a dumb like thought process that she had. And so every time I am there to challenge that. And this may actually be something that you want to do. Like with some of my students, I will, like, as they're kind of getting into that negative self talk, I will say to them, listen, I'm going to interrupt you because I think that you know what I'm going to say about the way you're talking right now. I do introduce the term like you're engaging in self faulting, you know? After you've started to talk with your favorite learner for a while, you can help them recognize this. And this is something that I do bring up in sessions where I'll say, hey, look, we don't want to fall into a pattern of self faulting. Or I'll say to them, okay, what do you think about, listen back to what you just said. Is that a good strategy to move forward, or are you engaging in self-faulting? And this can be something to um, to use as a strategy. Now, there's always going to be bumps in the road. You know, I mean, I've worked with so many students where they come in, they've like beefed it on a test. Well, of course, you're going to be feeling down about yourself. You're going to be, oh my God, I studied so hard. I should have done better. What did I do wrong? That's going to happen to anybody. So, a bad day can cause us to feel down. So if we have a bad day, we need to vent about that. We need to be lifted up. But self-faulting and internalization is going to be a pattern that you will notice. And as I've talked about this, you may notice that your favorite young lady is engaging in these kind of patterns, and maybe our talking points here are going to give you some ways to structure conversations to help her out of it. So the next one that we're going to talk about is the disorganized young lady who is dealing with ADHD. And I shared at the beginning that that was me in elementary school. I couldn't keep track of anything. I also like when I was little, I would like chew my pencils. I was like always kind of nervous in school because I couldn't keep track of papers. I couldn't keep my desk neat. It was just a wreck. And so you may be responding to this right now. Like a lot of times when I've talked to families and even students themselves, young ladies who are dealing with ADHD, when I say, these are like the three things that we notice when I get to disorganization, so many of my female students are like, well, that's me. I don't know where anything is. I have had students tell me about how they had a planner, but they lost it. How they have had different books and had to go buy a second copy. That was actually something that happened to a student that I started working with who's a college student when we started working together. And she was talking about, I have ADHD, now I'm in college and I want good strategies. And I said, okay, so give me an example. And she said, well, and she like grabs a little book and holds it up to the camera. She goes, this is the second copy of this I've had to buy. I got one on day one. I don't know where it is. And then in the course of our time together, I think it was like 5 or 6 weeks later, she was like, guess what I found today? And it was, the original book that she bought. And so, I mean, a lot of times when we talk about these types of things, we have like good humor, or we use like, humor as a defense mechanism. But this particular student was devastated by this. This was a source of a lot of shame for her because she could see that this wasn't everybody that was very disorganized. So I've seen this so many times when I start working with a girl who's dealing with ADHD, extreme disorganization. One of my students came to me when she was in 10th grade, and she had no organization whatsoever, kept track of nothing, had never checked her email, and she was in an IB program. And so I don't know if anybody here has kids in IB programs, or maybe we have some IB educators here, but IB programs are meticulous in the way that they structure everything, and they are giving a very high college-like curriculum when you are in those high school years. And so checking email, staying on top of things was mandatory for this student. But Carol just could not do it. She was extremely disorganized. So we started to figure out what was going on. So this kind of thing with disorganization, it seems like there should be some kind of like a magic bullet, or you should be able to go online and buy like, oh, ADHD planner, I'll get the planner and then everything will happen. That there is no magic wand for this. This is a process of coaching, working together, and consistency. And it can't be a matter of prescribing or telling or nagging. There is going to be some ebb and flow here of growth. There's going to be step forward. There are going to be a couple steps back, but the steps forward are going to outpace the steps backward. So with Carol, we started to work together, and I started with actually teaching her how to check things. She really did not know. This is another thing that sometimes happens with disorganized students. We will have an idea that kids should know how to do this, but really they need to be taught. So we learned how to check our things, and we learned why to check them. And we used habit stacking. Now, habit stacking, if anybody's familiar, there's a great book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, all about habit stacking. Habit stacking is when you want to introduce a small habit that will be meaningful into your life, and you figure out where it fits in the stuff you already do. So you can't add in huge things. You can't be like, like I always use like examples for like diet and exercise. It can't be like, well, I'm going to get in the habit of doing Pilates and I'm going to do that every day at dawn. That is not a habit stack. That is adding in an unrealistic expectation. A habit stack is more like, okay, I come home every day and then I walk the dog. I want to exercise more. I'm already walking the dog. In the future, I'm going to come home, change into workout clothes, and instead of walking the dog in the yard, I'm going to walk the dog for 2 miles. That's going to be my first little habit that I'm adding in. So we've already established what a normal routine is. I come home, I walk the dog. We're adding something into that. With our organization tasks, we say, okay, how do I check my email? Where do I check my email? It's on my computer. So we examine, when does the student sit at her computer? She sits at her computer to play games. Cool. Before I play my games, I will check my email. To solidify this, we used some light reminders. Carol put post-it notes on her computer. She set a reminder on her phone. She found other times in her day. She came up with one herself, like, oh, there's an email app on my phone. So before I click on social media, I'm going to click on my email app. And she actually rearranged her phone so that her email app was in the position that the social media app used to be in on the phone. So when she would open that phone, that place that she wanted to put her finger and click on social media was now her email. That's a habit stack. We have to add things in gradually. So this is something, and we set a really like equitable goal for this. So at first we said, okay, you're not checking your email at all. You're not doing this organization task at all. Could you do it twice a week? And at first she was like, oh, I could do it every day. I said, okay, I love the ambition, my dear. Let's try it twice a week. Well, that was so achievable that when she came back to the next session, she goes, I just want to tell you, I checked my email every day. So we set a very attainable goal for one organization task. And when that one was part of the habit, we added in another one. So now we're checking the email, we're checking the learning management system. Now we're figuring out ways to make our own agenda. When I started working with Carol, she was so disorganized. We would spend time in the session. I would handwrite it on my iPad and send it to her. And I was really doing stuff my mom had done for me. I had little cartoon ones and stuff to make it like cute. I would put the assignments down for her. I would send it to her and I would leave blank room for her to put other things. And then she would show me, oh yeah, well during the school day, you wrote down that this was due when we did our planning. Look at what I wrote down. I filled it out more. Then we moved her to, okay, here's the plan. Let's have you fill it out. And when this student is now in college and she comes to sessions, she has already sent me the agenda. Like we are still doing this. She takes everything on her iPad. She, like, before I go into the session, there is an email. Her schedule is attached to it. And I'm just like, yes, ma'am, personal assistant reporting to duty for the CEO. So when we are dealing with disorganization in the young ladies that we care about, here's what we want to think of. We want to think of slow and steady. We want to think of adding in small habits, and we want to think about consistency. This is not going to happen overnight. but my goodness, this is going to grow and bloom and give students a great sense of autonomy, a sense of control, and a better sense of self. And I have to say that every student I've worked with who has that self-faulting, a lot of it's about being disorganized. When we can get that taken care of, a lot of these other things also start to get a lot less heavy. So we're just about ready to get into Q&A. I do want to do a tiny preview of tomorrow's session. Tomorrow is our final day of our Fall into Focus webinars. We are talking about helping your child succeed in honors and AP classes in middle and high school. And we are going to have a conversation with two folks who know a lot about honors and AP classes. So I really hope to see you tomorrow if you have middle schoolers or high schoolers who are interested in those honors and AP classes. I know a ton of parents have questions about these. Come on down. We would love to see you. Now, I've been talking a lot in our webinar today about our executive function coaching sessions. So I want to give you a little bit more information about this. So at Educational Connections, we work with students one-on-one. So every one of these stories that I've told you about students I'm working with, I am working with that student in a private lesson space, and you can see a little picture of that here, where it's just me and the student for that great 1 hour session. Twice a week is kind of the best schedule that you can get for students to support them. And we are working on their actual work. And we have 4 steps to our hours that really supercharge that time. First, we check in and touch base on progress. So when I'm working with a student who is dealing with inattentiveness, dealing with disorganization, share your screen. Let's look at that work. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what those top priorities are. Then we plan together. We prioritize. Eventually, students are prioritizing themselves. Laurel, who I talked about at the beginning of this webinar, when she and I met the other night, she comes in, she goes, okay, I'm going to tell you the stuff I'm doing. We're going by due date today, Rachel. And I'm like, okay, not where you started, but love to see where you are. We are figuring out what's due, what's the top priority. We are putting things on the calendar. In the session, we work on the most worrisome assignments. So students are getting work time, collaborative work time using a strategy that we talk about so that they can practice things in a very supportive environment that they get immediate evidence about that they can then fold into the rest of their week. So this isn't like some lecture thing. This is a collaborative learning environment where students are immediately applying things to the work they are already doing. And so they get to see it not in some, artificial environment, but for what they're already assigned. The other thing that we do is we anticipate obstacles. So we're not talking to kids about like, oh, well, you'll have 50 hours to do this. We're thinking, hey, you have band practice, you have theater tech, you have cross country, you have basketball, soccer. How are we going to have time for the homework and also have time for these things that we want to do? And geez Louise, when we get to winter time, what if there's a snow day? We have to anticipate our obstacles. So all of these things are folded into our sessions, and it really helps all of the students that we as coaches are paired with. If you are interested in this, scan the QR code. There will be a link in the chat. You can make an appointment with one of our dedicated program managers. These professionals are going to be able to answer all of your questions. We pair our students with coaches that are trained in areas that will best support them. So this is not an on-demand thing. This is something where your child is paired with a professional that is going to be able to support that student. Okay, so I'm going to leave this up here. And I'm going to start digging into the chat here so that we can see like what kind of questions we have, because I noticed that like some good stuff was popping up. Okay, so the first one I'm going to address is there's a question. Have any of your students taken medicines for ADHD? So I'm an educator. I'm not a diagnostician. I'm not somebody that like can prescribe anything. That is a great question, but that's one for somebody that has more medical expertise. I am the first one to tell you what I am qualified to do, and the first one to say what I'm not qualified to do. Since we are an educational organization, we're talking educational strategies, but that would just be a question to ask somebody that is in more of like a medical field. So I wanted to address that one because maybe other folks have that question too. Okay, so we have a question from Steph who said, we now have homework every single day, and I would love strategies to get homework done without burning her out and overwhelming her. So Steph, this seems like a disorganization thing. You know what I mean? Like this seems like, okay, if there's a ton of homework, this may be a thing where she doesn't know how to organize it. She doesn't know how to manage the time. A really great strategy that we talk about a lot with homework, especially, is the Pomodoro strategy. So the Pomodoro strategy is it is a time management strategy, and we talk a lot about this in other webinars, so I'm going to go over it really quickly. The Pomodoro strategy is the baby, I'm going to say it that way, of a gentleman named Francesco Cirillo, who is now one of the world's like productivity experts. And when he was a university student, he could not get his work done. He was taking a sociology class. He was procrastinating like crazy, didn't know how to parse out his time. He grabs a kitchen timer, sets it for 2 minutes, and is like, "Dummy, pay attention to this book, and just really read it. Can you do that for 2 minutes?" Lo and behold, he can. And he studied the human attention span then for like the rest of his life. And what he found out is we have 25 minutes that we can deeply pay attention to something. The Pomodoro method uses that magic number 25 to supercharge a student's attention. So what you do is you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work on the homework. This isn't a race, so it's not like get it done as fast as possible. But what I tell students is we're going to do it nice, and we're going to do this work to the best of our ability. We're going to do work that we're proud of. We don't have to work fast, but we have to work proud of our work. So that gives them a nice even pace. After the 25 minutes, you have a 5-minute break. Now, in our sessions, I use what I call a mini Doro of 15 minutes. And the break in the traditional Pomodoro method is a break where you get up, walk away from the work, go make a cup of tea, come back after 5 minutes. In sessions, I use this for reflection. So what I do is I will ask the student before they start working, how long do you think this is going to take you? They will give me an estimate. Oh, this vocab sheet is going to take me 2 hours. Okay, cool. Let's see how much you get done in 15 minutes. After the 15 minutes, we reflect. Okay, so you thought this was going to take 2 hours. How many questions are there? There's 20. Okay, in 15 minutes, how much did you get done? Oh my God, I got 10 done. Okay, so let's make another estimate. How long is this going to take you? And then you can make an estimate where these vocab worksheets are probably going to take me 30 minutes. This is a great strategy for homework because a lot of times kids that are dealing with ADHD, and I mean, heck, everybody, none of us can like manage time. I know that like when it's time for me to clean my downstairs between the kitchen and the living room, sometimes I'm like, well, this is going to take me all day. I use this method a lot for myself, and I'm always like, wow, that took me 25 minutes to pick up all that stuff and put it away. So I would even encourage you, like, you could like try this with yourself in a way, you know? Um, but if you have somebody that's struggling with homework, try to work on time estimates because it's going to help them prioritize. It's going to help them manage the time that they have. And it's also going to cut down on some of that like worry and procrastination, like, oh, I can't do this. It's going to take too long because now they're going to have an accurate representation of how long the work actually takes. Okay, so I'm looking through our thing. So Charlene, you had asked a question. One of your questions was like, a lot about that self-faulting. So I'm going to kind of like reiterate from before, challenge it. I'm not good at XYZ. So she's like, I'm not good at history. I'm just not good at it. And then you're like, well, wait a minute. You're always like, reading your textbook and stuff for science class. I mean, so that's kind of like nonfiction, and history is nonfiction. Again, like challenging, like what makes you say you're not good at that? That self-faulting, whenever you hear that I'm not good at, ask questions to get her to tell you what she is good at that's parallel to what she has to do. And the hardest thing is, this is what we want to do as family members. We want to tell them what they're good at. We want to say, oh, come on. You in sixth grade, you did that report on Martha Washington and you were so good at that. We want to pep talk, but it has to come out of her mouth. So instead of telling her, ask the question where she's going to tell you. And that's going to be such a great way to access that. Okay, so we have some questions here about task initiation. Getting a student to like start doing things. Task initiation can be really hard. So I work with a student who deals with ADHD, and task initiation is something that we are constantly working on. So what will happen in her sessions is like she had a an assignment for her English class. And she had like it was almost done, had a little bit more to do, just had to initiate those final tasks. Did not want to work on it. Wanted to work on something else. So one of the patterns that I use is I negotiate with the student about what we're going to work on together. So I'll say like, okay, I understand that you don't want to work on this thing for English, and this is a big priority because it's due, and right now we got to get your grade up. Can we check on this in 10 minutes? Absolutely, we can check on it in 10 minutes. When we go back 10 minutes later, I have listened to what she's said about it. So this particular student, like this work, she was like, well, I mean, it's not even that important. And these questions are asking me what I would like, what I would want to know more about in this book, but like I don't even like the Crucible, so I don't want to learn anything more about it. So when the 10 minutes comes back around, I say, hey, I understand you don't want to learn any more about it, but could you write a question? Could you like maybe think of something somebody who isn't you would want to learn about? So now I've taken the thing that the kid doesn't want to do and I've kind of like reframed it a bit. And lo and behold, she can think up things that other people might want to learn about. And so we can have a really productive discussion. And then she was able to get stuff done. So the strategy that I use there is I tell the student that we're going to revisit it by asking, hey, can we revisit this in 10 minutes? You work on something else, let's revisit it in 10 minutes. When 10 minutes comes back up, I am revisiting it, but I'm not talking about it in the same way. Because the kid is expecting me to say something like, hey, are you going to do that now? No, I'm going from a different angle. You said that this was impossible because of this. Could you try that instead? That has a lot of success because a lot of times they're going to like, I mean, everybody does when somebody nags you, you just shut down. It's just like, for me, it's like in my head, it's like, the teacher in Peanuts, like, wah, 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 wah. Like they are going to tune you out. If you go through it, like through a different direction, you can really access that task initiation. Okay, I'm looking at the time right now, and I'm willing to stay around like 10 more minutes to answer some more questions. Anybody that wants to, say goodbye right now, we are going to have a replay, but anybody that wants to stick around for more questions, I'm going to answer as many as I can in 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, I have another question about note taking. Do you have any recommendations for note taking technology like apps or AI assist that helps kids with low processing speed, working memory? Okay, so I love that we have all of these like new types of technology that we can put into the classroom. However, since I coach so many students who are in college, I am noticing more than ever in my life that students are now not allowed to have technology in the lecture hall. I am noticing that there is a lot of use of technology in the high school classroom, and then when they get to college, that is all shutting down. So, in order to prepare students for the skills they're going to need in the future, one of the best things that we can get them to do is to take notes at their ability. And there are ways to help these without the use of AI assistance. So, one of the things that I always recommend is self advocacy to get a copy of teacher notes or peer notes. So, the student is taking the notes. So if your favorite young lady is really having like some processing issues, is not picking up anything, her taking notes herself is still an invaluable skill. She needs to have that. That is going to help her today and in the future. And if she takes notes, she is going to get faster and better at it. When we add in an AI assistant for something like that of struggle, we are cutting off a person from gaining that skill. So we want to use the note-taking skill and not a computer skill. And many times students are able to get peer notes, which means that I do this in my classroom. So I have students that take their own notes, that get peer notes. I have students that volunteer to leave their notes with me. I photocopy them, and then I have them for my students to take peer notes, or I distribute the peer notes to students who have requested them or who get them. And everybody wins. The kids that are like volunteering the peer notes is everybody's hero. The kids with like, yes, I am the note taker. The kids who are getting the peer notes are able to compare to theirs. It's also great because it allows them a study strategy. Many teachers will provide a note-taking apparatus or guide where kids can fill in if they're dealing with processing issues. Many teachers will also provide kids with teacher-created notes where they can write on them, they can highlight things, they can add things in. So we do not want to replace this essential note-taking skill. We want to provide apparatuses that support the skill so that that is put into every one of our learners. Okay. I'm just scrolling through some questions here. Okay, so we have some questions about disorganization. Um, okay, kids who with ADHD who are visiting colleges, what should they be looking for in student support services at a college? Okay, so I um I work with so many students, especially so many young ladies who are in college who are dealing with ADHD every single day. So one of the things that you can do when you go on a college visit is ask specifically what supports are there for students. So I can give a couple examples. I work with a student who goes to VCU. VCU has, and that's in Virginia, Virginia Commonwealth University. That university, they have accommodations where each student goes to the accommodations office. They work with a counselor there. The counselor helps them like contact their professors. The student then meets with the professors and they can have accommodations in every single class. I work with students that go to universities in San Diego and San Jose out in California. Those universities, they also have accommodations offices. Some schools actually have websites where the kid logs in like before a test, before an assignment to contact a professor and gives the university like the accommodation that they want for the class. So these are like some broad examples, but the takeaway here is every single university has this, but it's something you have to ask about. So when you go on those college visits, fold that in. Go on the website, find the accommodations and send them an email. fold that into the college visit so that when you're touring campus and you're touring the dorm, you get to meet with one of those accommodations counselors so that everything is taken care of for your favorite young lady. Just scrolling through some questions here. Okay, so we have one here. My sixth grader doesn't receive much homework, but it's clear she's not getting enough math practice between exams. She's defiant and unwilling to use free time to work on self-imposed practice problems as voluntary homework. This is an ongoing challenge. Okay. Is there a math tutoring issue or an executive function / organization issue? So what I would recommend here is that so if she doesn't have much homework, and this is wonderful that she doesn't have much homework because it means that she's learning in the classroom where she's being observed by a teacher. Because homework is something where the only thing, like I'm going to talk as a teacher now, when I see like homework that's given back to me, the only guarantee that I have is that it's done. I don't know who did it. So it can be that like the homework goes home, and then all of a sudden, like sixth graders have the math prowess of, like finance majors in college. So homework in different classes isn't necessarily a way to assess what a student understands. But I can see here in this question that there are some concerns about like, okay, is she not paying attention? Is she not understanding? My suggestion here is to reach out to the teacher. Maybe the teacher has like a free period where she works with kids on math concepts, or maybe there's like a mathletes club that she could be involved in, something that's more in the school. Because like honestly, if you don't have any homework and you've been in school all day and then you come home and you have to do more school, well, and you're 12 years old, that's like that's rough. So I would say talk to the teacher, get recommendations like from that teacher to see what kind of supports would really help that particular student. Okay, there are a ton of great comments in here. Okay, so how do you get students to start tasks on their own other than setting a timer? This is a great question. So here's the thing about this. At first, you're going to have supports. So at first, the strategies are going to come from like outside. They're going to, and this is true of like when I work with students. So when students come into my sessions, at first, like I've had kids where maybe the I don't know, the first like 4 or 5 sessions, they're really doing stuff when the kid and I are working together. And then we start to see, okay, it's gradually filtering into they're choosing to do it themselves. So if you are like worried about task initiation, realize that that's going to have to grow. So the first couple times, it's going to be you coaching the student who you love. And then you can start to have the conversation like, hey, you're doing really well when you and I do this together. How about if you do this twice in the next week on your own? And then like kind of like hold them to it. Let's pick the day, let's pick the time that you're going to do this on your own. Then the next time, okay, you did it. Great job. You did it on your own. How about if could you pick 2 times that you're going to do this? I want you to say what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. It's a gradual process. And then eventually things are going to start like clicking, you know? So it's not something that's going to happen overnight with task initiation, but giving the option for them to initiate on their own can be really effective once they have like, some supports where they are getting things done with some coaching and help. So I'm looking at the time here, and it is 1 o'clock. We are so delighted that you came to today's webinar. I would be over the moon to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're focusing on strategies for honors and AP classes for middle and high school students. Thank you for all of the amazing questions, and have a beautiful rest of your day.